Oh shit. Hello everybody. My name is Dean and I am the what what roles did I give myself? I am the executive producer, lead creative director, and video editor for the InkGuild, which as of today has reached 1 year. I'm a very sentimental person, so this date means a lot to me. What started originally as a, I've said this before, but what originally started as a passion project between friends has now become like a regularly occurring thing for us. Like, we've planned out whole seasons together as friends, and it hasn't come without its challenges, as we were all in university at the time, but having this platform to express our love for creative writing, reading, favorite characters, least favorite characters, favorite video game stories, and all these things has been wonderful, especially during the last few months of quarantine, because obviously it's been hard on everyone, but this project has pretty much kept me going. It's given me something to do over the last few months, and as it's been a year now, I wanted to compile I don't necessarily know what to call it, but like it's a collection of some of our favorite stories over the last few years. So on the InkGuild podcast, we have shared many different kinds of topics, and between the 9 of us, so me, Gabe, Alex, Brooke, Marie-Soleil, Madi, Mark, Georgia, and Jessica, all 9 of us have shared some of our favorite stories, favorite topics, and we're going to be compiling them into a quick video for you guys to enjoy. All of the listed episodes that we've talked about will be in the description below, as well as our respective social media. But otherwise, thank you for everyone who's been here and everyone who is joining for the first time. Happy 1 year to the InkGuild, and this video going up, we have season 4 coming up soon, which is starting up. The first episode will be on the week of May 12th. I don't really remember which date exactly, but keep your eye out on that. Otherwise, thank you everybody for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the video. Thank you for coming across our channel, and we'll see you in season 4.
I'm making it up. He doesn't have rights.
Arsenic or cyanide, but yeah.
Arson?
Holy shit!
So is it the bee and the lady from the bee movie?
Additionally, more of a sub. Oh no.
Are you doing this?
Why are you doing this? Oh god! Thank you.
Thumbnail for all the podcasts are just gonna be big woman.
No.
You guys know that I can't say can't.
Why Yandere Simulator? Why is that the comparison you made? I'm not Alex, but...
oh, gamer girl. I need to fucking simp.
No, Alex. Flip it for Instagram, how about that?
Fuck you.
I don't buy it. Just go to fucking therapy.
If I develop Sims, delete the channel.
Fuck capitalism. We need to start a revolution.
And you know what? I'm gonna say it.
I can't replace a fire alarm on my home. Technically, 25 is technically you.
Say your morning routine.
For mine, or for my final pick, fuck the Calypso twins from Borderlands 3. I could not loathe another pair of absolutely boring, shallow villains if I tried. They are so goddamn cringe that it makes me sad. It audibly makes me sad. So, just to give some background into Borderlands 3, apparently after the wildly successful story that Borderlands 2 had and an amazing villain in Handsome Jack, I was really excited to go into Borderlands 3 because they had hyped up that the story was going to take a huge W right? They were going to make it like this big thing. And honestly, the red flag should have came when the Calypso twins, Troy and Tyrene, started speaking like streamers. You don't ever think it is one thing to say poggers in a Twitch stream, but saying it outside of a Twitch stream, it is a whole other level of cringe that you need to be playing with, that you need to be with other gamers to understand. Because if you say poggers to a bunch of people in your class, you look like a fucking idiot. And that's exactly what Troy and Tyrene are. They are.
Hold on. They say poggers in the game?
They don't say pogger. No.
Okay, I was like, what?
No. Okay, here's the thing though. I almost wish they kind of did, because that would make it that I wouldn't even be including them onto this list. They would be a whole other kind of shitpost. But basically, Troy and Tyrene are like these their whole market is that they've united the bandit clans of Pandora and are entertainers, basically. So like they live stream their conquests to the entire solar system or the entire galaxy or fucking whatever. And because of that, it's supposed to be mocking like content creators in a way, because they're like very exuberant, they're very extra. They're like, hey guys, what's up? They don't directly say poggers, but like they might as well, given how like out of date Borderlands' humor can be sometimes. But anyway, it should have been a red flag when they were announced that they would be these like, that they would be these like content creators. But when you get into the actual story, they are so goddamn boring. For villains, for like big bad villains as the main antagonists, they are so fucking awful. Like Tyrene is supposedly the big bad, and she is the one who runs the show, and Troy is the parasitic in a way brother that like kind of just leeches off the power. Tyrene is a siren, which kind of breaks canon a little bit, I think, because only 6 sirens can exist within the Borderlands, or within a certain time in the Borderlands frame, and yet now here are 2 of them. But supposedly, Tyrene has her siren abilities makes it so that she can conveniently leech off of powers, which is both kind of cool and really lazy, because for storyline reasons, she uses just that. Troy sucks a hell of a lot harder, because at least with Tyrene, her having like the initial siren powers and being able to like leech off of whatever siren she wants, that's cool. But Troy is just a parasitic little fucking bitch. Like he really, like, he kind of just leeches off Tyrene and is just more annoying and more I keep saying detestable, but like I really fucking hate Troy, because he offers almost nothing, even even in regards to the main story, when he actually gets powers and from Maya. So spoiler warning, Maya dies because because of Troy, like he takes her powers basically. That was a terrible build sequence. It made no sense. And Troy now suddenly having Maya's powers just makes him even more stupid and even more detestable. Because at that point, it's like, all right, now you're trying to be your own badass. Cool, I guess, but I still hate you because you're still insufferable. You're still annoying. You're still addressing your audience of bandits as fucking like Gen Z Twitch watchers. I don't know what the hell to call it, but like it makes it even worse. Like it just gets worse for me, because the thing is, they're connected to one of the most influential figures supposedly within this game. They're connected to Typhon DeLeon, who is supposedly like this huge figure within Borderlands 3. And it's revealed that they're like Typhon DeLeon is the parent of both Troy and Tyreen. And when you realize that, it just makes everything so much more goddamn annoying, because they had a really interesting father kid story, and they wasted it, because where there could have been a lot of really nice emotional depth and connection between Typhon and his children, almost completely squandered. It's not even expanded on, really. And Typhon Tyreen and Troy, they're kind of just like, oh, you held us back for so long, when we could have had all this power and influence. That's not a fucking story anymore. I don't like that. Like, it's my one other thing is, like, I hate it when, like, villains are just trying to be villains for the sake of getting power. I'm like, I need more depth than that nowadays. But anyway, I think the only point of praise I'll give these two is the boss battles, but that's just more commenting on the gameplay, which Borderlands 3 is best for. Their story is so bad because they have such terrible main antagonists. Like, I hate their costume designs. I don't necessarily hate their voice actors, but, like, I hate the lines that they've been given. I hate the fact that they're Twitch streamers, I hate the fact that they're streamers in general, because, like, I love watching Twitch streams. I think saying poggers ironically is kind of funny, but, like, I don't ever want to have that kind of energy in my fucking video games. And lastly, there was a lot of interesting potential that they could have expanded on in these games, but because they didn't, fuck the Calypso twins. Thank you.
This is why I did not play Borderlands 3.
Yeah.
That was a really nice rant.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was the one I'd been thinking about the most today. A influential, or how do you write a good piece of historical fiction? And I guess my first piece of advice is just to lean into your creativity more so than facts. Like,
yeah,
you don't always have to rely on you don't always have to have Hitler in your stories. You don't always need to have, gladiators in your ancient Rome stories. You don't always need to have, like, Leonardo da Vinci in your Renaissance stories. Like, just introduce good characters that fit the time period, and you're good to go. Like, that's a good starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially with, again, deciding from the beginning what kind of what group you want to portray, right? Like, for a lot of different periods of time and focusing on certain groups of people, it doesn't make sense to bring in prominent figures from that time, or, like, you don't necessarily have to have a bunch of big accurate facts kind of thing, as long as you're telling a good story that's true to the era.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, if you're starting to write something that you're going to be classifying as historical fiction, my starting point would be to gain some understanding of that period of time.
Oh, yeah.
So I recently wrote that story, The Thief, the Crier, and Those Damned Dark Ages. And
I love the title.
Inspiration, right? Oh, me too. It's so much fun. And the inspiration came in the middle of a medieval history class at MRU. And I was sitting there listening to Emily Hutchison tell us about crime and punishment in those times, how a thief would have an ear cut off, and then they'd be pilloried.
Oh my
town
god.
Square. Yeah, right? And then they'd have a town crier, sometimes, not always, but they'd have a crier walking around calling out the crime that was committed by this person. And just that, the general understanding of how they viewed crime and how they viewed justice was enough for me to write this piece.
Yeah.
That was actually deeply satirical and critical of our current justice system.
Yeah.
That was actually its main focus, was attacking our modern day utilizing the medieval ages.
Yeah. Can we go on a really, really, really quick side tangent for just a couple minutes?
Yes.
How
Definitely.
I'm gonna start off with the statement. Punishment during the medieval ages was so fucked. From my understanding of it, it wasn't like I guess through like different videos and stuff, I learned about people getting like castrated, people getting locked in iron bowls and cooked basically. Like people like I finally figured out what hung, drawn, and quartered was. That's disgusting.
Yeah.
Like there were people
Oh,
who
it
had
was-
like, yeah, it's disgusting. It's so fucked, and it's actually kind of cool.
Well, see, they actually had. There was a really interesting system of justice in place, where, from my understanding, was you commit a crime, you are committing a crime against the natural order,
Mhm.
and that was the big thing back then, natural order, with God at the top, kind of thing.
Yeah,
So when you commit a crime, you are offending your fellow man, you are offending the king, you are offending God.
yeah,
And so they would design punishments to suit that belief, and it could range. It could just be as simple as being thrown out of your guild, which in those days guilds were conglomerates of industry that regulated how that industry operated.
yeah.
And to not be a member of it was to be doomed.
Mhm.
Absolutely doomed. And you couldn't enter into contracts anymore, which also, gut punch, game over. And it was just this reflection of, you've offended society, so get out.
Yeah,
It was just this weird kind of shunning, almost. And then it ramped up from there to public embarrassment, to, the visceral and
yeah,
vicious punishments that we all know so well.
yeah.
And
The
all of it
very
was public.
yeah. Like it's
It-
all
it was-
for. I guess it was all for the people's enjoyment, basically, watching these fucked up things happen to people.
Yeah, it was a
Which-
spectacle and a warning.
Yeah.
If you step out of line, this is what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a weird time.
Oh yeah. And I feel kind of weird segueing from like medieval torture to another piece of writing advice, but to kind of go off of what Mark said, yeah, definitely know your history. It doesn't think like I don't really recommend that you should just do a couple of quick Google searches and then you're ready to write about like 1500s South America or something. Like, don't do that. Definitely do a lot more research. And I guess from my perspective, don't be afraid to ask, like, don't be afraid to like really go in depth with your research either. It kind of just helps build a better picture of it. Or it kind of helps build a better picture of not just the world that you are trying to encapsulate, but also it just help it make it feel more alive, basically. And this is coming from a fantasy writer that is so imperative on making sure that not every little detail, but like enough details help make the world feel real enough, right? It's just different with historical fiction because all of this did at one point happen. So it's, I think, within the author's best interest to not necessarily portray that same thing word for word. Obviously, there's a lot of room for, artistic or like authors' interpretations and whatever, but just understand what you're writing and, write it well, basically.
Yeah, it all comes back to world building,
Mhm.
which is just a fact of story writing for any genre. You're always trying to build a world. And yeah, like you said, with historical fiction, you're grounded in this world and things that happened.
Yeah.
So it's important to understand the way things went in that period.
Mhm.
Otherwise, like with any other bad world building, it won't feel natural and it won't feel real, and no one's going to want to read it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if
fantasy writers aren't going to tune into, like, you know, to go off of what Mark said, if fantasy writers aren't going to tune into your world because it feels empty, then odds are historical fiction writers won't want to turn into your story because it doesn't feel alive enough, which is interesting because this at one point happened in history, so I don't know how you would be able to do that. But
blatant ignoring of
yeah, like
how the world worked.
Yeah, like if you're gonna write about the Renaissance, like know about significant changes that happened during it, right? Because at that point you are like part of a timeline. And even if you are going off an alternate timeline, like if you're even going off an alternate timeline, like how they do in the Wolfenstein games, like there's still a lot of significance that you would have to include with your story, right? That, you know, you have to consider in context of, you know, societal roles, this and that, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, very much.
You know, that's not to, like, that's, you know, definitely don't write in characters that are defying their like place in society, without considering the context of it, because odds are, you know, at the very least it won't work, and at the very worst, oh no, I can't even imagine.
Right.
You'll just start a debate that was completely unnecessary, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're writing a story with someone who is defying their societal role, then you'd better understand what their societal role was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Like, obviously, when we're considering modern context, things have changed, but if you're writing about a story in the past, you know, do consider that too. But at the same time, that's actually one final point that I wanted to touch on, actually. Even though you were looking back into the past, be sure to be mindful still of context. Like, context is super important when you're looking into historical stories. And, you know, Mark can elaborate on this further, but basically, like, if you're going to be writing like a very, and I know I'm delving into dangerous territory here, but if you're going to be talking about stories that involve, let's say, the N-word, like, make sure you're getting your shit properly.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
God, yeah.
Yeah. Or anything that involves very serious conversation, or very, like, anything that has to deal with very serious discussions like that. If you're going to do it, please do it properly and consider the context in which you're writing it. Like, do not ever just do something for the sake of drawing attention. Like they always say, you know, bad press is good press or whatever, but like, I think that's bullshit. Just be a decent person.
Very much so.
And
man, in this day and age,
yeah, like, be a decent storyteller.
Worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so The Thief and the Crier, it wasn't necessarily historical, I wouldn't say, but I did try to ground it in history, which became very, very awkward and very uncomfortable for me at one point, because I was trying to segue to a joke about the fall of Roman Catholicism in England,
mm-hmm.
in which the Crier makes a joke about, well, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to have one divorce and the whole Catholic Church is going to collapse, which is, of course, what happened.
Yeah. Oh, yikes.
But trying to segue to that point, I had to reference a bad relationship in the medieval ages. And so I wrote this passage that was uncomfortably patriarchal and misogynistic almost. It was horrible writing it and going back and forth for, God, weeks, trying to decide if I needed it in there. How could I soften it out so it wasn't as bad in the context of the medieval ages,
mm-hmm.
which were horrifically patriarchal and misogynistic. Is this okay to say? Like, it's historical fiction can get really, really awkward really, really fast, and you have to make some pretty uncomfortable decisions.
Yeah. Which is why, like, it's certainly not a genre for the faint of heart. There definitely is, like, a lot more that, you know, like, you could bet that, like, a historical writer could probably churn out a fantasy story, but a fantasy writer can't nearly put out. I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I'm just saying, like, my main point is that when it comes to diving into the past, you have to be mindful of context, and like context back then, context now. Like, you know, if you're going to be touching on very serious subjects that make you or could potentially make a lot of people uncomfortable, just make sure that if you're going to include it in there, be prepared for any kind of potential consequences that can come from this, because there have been consequences of these events, right?
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
Be prepared for that.
Yeah, and it's a lot of history is very dark, very uncomfortable. And if you're going to set something in those times, there's, again, a really thin line that you have to walk, where you have to portray the reality of that time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So in the medieval ages, as very patriarchal, while not going too far, and just being misogynistic yourself in writing it.
Yeah.
And it's a delicate balance, and I don't know, that story got published, so I must have walked the line all right, but
yeah, even
now I'm still cringing, thinking that someone might read that and just be like, wow, you suck.
Yeah. It's like you didn't just get history wrong, but, you know, you're just blatantly misogynistic or something, when, you know, that's not the case. It's what happens as part of the story. It doesn't necessarily reflect your own personal beliefs, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it is just a fact of that period of time that this is something that existed. And it was very brief, one sentence kind of thing, one piece of dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that I was able to portray it in a way that it was the reality of the time, but was giving the suggestion that this isn't okay. This isn't right.
Yeah.
And, like, yeah, it's just trying to make sure that you do that. That you present it and spin it in that way where you not spinning it, that's the wrong term. Present it in that way where you are saying, they thought this. They really did.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not okay.
Yeah, it's like, take the modern context out of it and position yourself within the context of these people. Like, it can obviously be hard to do that, but when like we had already said, when diving into the past like that, you have to be mindful of, like, what's happened, how these people thought, what's, you know, how did people react to it, right? Like, as as I don't want to say taboo, but, like, as changed as a society as we are now, like, we certainly didn't have clean roots, and that's what makes writing about, like, historical events both fascinating and potentially career ruining at the very least, but kind of life threatening at the very worst.
Yeah, it's easy to misstep, and you got to think. A lot of scenes take a lot of thought to try to portray them properly.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, just be careful out there, everyone, with writing historical fiction. Like, you know, don't be afraid to write about one of your favorite time periods and set your own characters and whatever, but just make sure that you're doing your research and learn from your research, especially because that's what we as a society did. after experiencing a lot of hardships, or at least that's what we're trying to do. Because under the state of the world that we're in right now, like, history may not be completely repeating itself, but man, it certainly isn't fucking pretty.
Right?
Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah, it's when you're writing it, just I had a good way to put this, and now it's left my head. You know, portray the truth of what happened, but remember that what you're working on is contextualizing and analyzing history to portray that, yes, this was the reality. This was wrong. And think about how we've taken steps away from it and the work that still needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
That's the power of history.
Yeah.
It shows us where the missteps have been so that we can be better and learn to be better and remember that we've been awful. Just the worst kind of species on the face of this earth.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got a lot of work to do, but you look back, you see those mistakes, and that's the way to move away from it. It's the way to build something better than we had before.
Maddie.
Hi. My next love story it's actually, well, I was gonna go for the classic Great Gatsby, but it's so overdone, so I decided to change it up, and I want to talk about the show Atypical. It follows a young man named Sam. He's on the spectrum and he goes to public school. It's just as a show about awareness, really, really well done. And I used to work with kids on the spectrum, and I just found this show was such a great example for them when they were old enough to watch it, because they were quite young. Because the main character, Sam, ends up having a romantic relationship with kind of a loudmouth, obnoxious, nerdy girl. And there needs to be representation for kids on the spectrum that they can find love too.
Absolutely.
And this show does just that. It makes my heart so happy. Sam works through his love for Paige in such a cute and wholesome way that makes you feel good. And then their relationship turns a little bit more PG-14, or 13. It's 13, isn't it?
I don't know.
I think both exist.
There's such a
actually.
leap between 13 and 14-year-olds and what shit they kind of do.
Right? And so then they start exploring like a sexual relationship, and I find that to be, it's so significant to have an example out there for young kids on the spectrum and know that they can have love, they can find love, they can be sexual with their partner, and it's okay and it's normal, and it can be something special for them too. I just love it. I highly recommend it. It's a great show just as is. Like, it's not necessarily a love-based show. It's just kind of like a life show. It has 3 seasons. I've binged it like 3 times now. It's so good. It's so funny. Sam is so lovable. Paige becomes lovable. At first, I hated her, but now I just kind of like her because she's grown on me a bit. She's not as obnoxious anymore.
Nice. It's good to know. I applaud you, Maddie, for choosing like very, I guess like very important stories, like very good, like very important, while not holistically romance story or like romantic stories, like they do have very important messages to them.
Thank you. I mean, this is maybe a whole tangent we shouldn't get into, but I feel as I get older and now that I'm out of high school, further in my life, I've experienced romantic relationships, I wish that there would have been more healthy role models for me to look up to in social media. I mean, I had a great role model relationship in my life with my parents, but media didn't have one. And now when I recommend romance, anything, I try to make it healthy because I just see how much it affected me as a young girl. And I just wish that it would have been different now that I'm older.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, be the change that you want, right? But okay, I guess with all of our recommendations out of the way, to touch on what Maddie briefly said, I won't try to take everything that she said because I'm going to try to pull off an amazing transition here, but she had mentioned that like there were a lot of things associated with romance stories that, you know, can sometimes seep into real life. And through that, we have tropes. And I didn't do a good transition, but we're going to go with it anyway. So there are a lot of common tropes when it comes to, I guess, romantic relationship stories or, you know, romantic relationship dynamics. And originally, I did state that we were going to try to cover 2 of them, but because we're closing in on our first hour here, let's try to keep it maybe just to 1, because I know that with our ship discussion, that'll take a lot more time. So I'll try to keep mine relatively short. One of my favorite tropes now that I think I said in a previous episode of the podcast was a guilty pleasure is enemies to lovers. I fucking love that shit now. It is so a thing. It's like it's still like everything that I said in that episode, I still kind of echo now. So like the whole notion of like they want to kill each other at first, but then they're now fucking each other. That's great. It's fun. It's thing. Like it's a fun dynamic that I think, while it is obviously being played up a lot right now in a lot of YA books especially, I think it still has its place, and if done well, it can still be something that carries forward into other stories. And yeah, I don't really have much else to expand on enemies to lovers. Probably someone else can, but I think briefly, actually, on the opposite end, there is friends to lovers. And friends to lovers is, I think, the love story that I still want to go for. Like, personally, I'm very much a person that would love to have a friend first and then date them if the relationship and the consent is there. I don't know, it just seems like a very it always results in the perfect romantic ending that a lot of Hollywood loves to portray it as. You know, like they go through their issues and they have their ups and downs, but ultimately it's not like extremely toxic ups and extremely toxic downs. It's like healthy. Friends to lovers always is like a very healthy thing, and I like that shit.
Yeah, funny you should say that, because that's also the first one I wrote down. Specifically, I did childhood friends to lovers. But like for me, it's the same thing. It's like the idea of, like, you know, someone who knows you so well and then you start dating. It's just always like a top tier content right there. Yeah. Love it. Because you already talked about it, though. That's all I'll say about it. The other one that I wrote down is the power couple dynamic, which is like, you know, you have the people in the couple are both like super powerful, strong. They're each other's equals in every way. They like walk into a room together and everyone turns to stare. That's also a favorite dynamic of mine. Just like two people that are the top of their game and respect each other for it, and everyone is like jealous of them and in awe of them because they're like, how no one is ever gonna be that cool.
Facts. I was thinking, for some reason, when you said that, the power couple, I was thinking like The Incredibles popped into my head.
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good example of it.
Yeah, it's still my favorite. I think I couldn't really think of any other ones. It was always like, oh, Mr. and Mrs. Incredible. I remember like their wedding scene. That was very cute.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so fun. And when you have like two like really powerful characters, especially if you're going into like superheroes or like magic or like, you know, sword fighting, that kind of stuff, and they're like equally matched. And like can take out big groups of enemies together. That's just it's top tier content.
Hard agree. All right. Gabe, how about you? Let's breeze through your tropes real quick.
Yeah, I only have one, so it's
Alright.
going to be super quick because it's very simple. It's very basic. I just fucking love it. It's the outlaw couple trope. It's sort of a subgroup of the power couple trope, but it's specifically with crimes. I love criminal couples. I love them so much. I love just having two characters who are just chaotic, criminal demons just want to just fuck shit up, and they want to fuck shit up together. Like, if you give me like an Anne Bonny and Mary Read or like a Bonnie and Clyde, this is right here is my favorite thing ever. I think about this every day. I think about this all night long. I stay awake at night not sleeping because I'm thinking of this.
It's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah.
Now
Is there
you
any,
will
like,
never
can't sleep.
Yeah.
You will never show me an example of like an outlaw couple where I'll be like, oh, I don't really like that. I didn't really like that at all. And that's also why Baccano is like one of my favorite animes, because that show has a lot of relationships in it. And usually I'm not a fan of a series where a lot of the characters get paired up by the end of it. But all of the characters in Baccano are criminals, so I make a fucking exception for it because I like seeing criminals getting paired up.
Nice.
Amen.
All right, Maddie.
Amen to crime.
Yeah.
Well,
that's a thing. We were talking about good messages. That's a fucking good one, isn't it?
Insider Revolution.
Thanks, guys. We can recommend role models, just we can't be that.
Dance, dance, you, me, dance, dance, revolution. Revolution, overthrow the government? Yeah, I sure hope it does.
Oh my fucking god, what happened? We were so in focus, guys. All right, sorry. Maddie, go ahead.
yeah, I'm going to turn it around on the healthy because I've talked about this in my guilty pleasures with you guys, but the good girl, bad boy, I love it. I live for it. I always think of Grease when this happens too, like when I think about this, because it's just the classic bad guy in a leather jacket, slicked back hair, and he's like all tall, dark, and broody and handsome, and she's always cute and like super blonde and usually always white, but I don't know. I just fall for it. As crappy of a trope it is, I like it. And I can't get enough of it. I'm like Gabe with the crime. I just like lay in bed and think about it all the time. I just love. And you know what? I'm going to say it. I think about this with Jughead Jones and Betty Cooper on Riverdale all the time.
Oh,
and I hate
no.
Riverdale, but it's so good. I can't get enough. Alex, I know you said you didn't like Riverdale at one point, I think, but
Oh, that's very
Listen.
polite of you, Maddie.
At only one point? That's
At only one point. What the? Did you just meet Alex yesterday?
Can't wait for my weekly Riverdale watch tomorrow where I rant about all the nonsensical plot points to my friends. I do hear you though.
I can't blame you.
If this
I do
channel
hear
ever
you,
gets
though.
fucking merchandise, there's gonna be like Alex soundbite buttons where it's like fuck Riverdale or fuck Sarah J Maas or fuck this.
I can't blame her though. Like in the first season when Jughead is like, I'm different, Betty. I don't fit in. I was like,
I'm weird.
someone turn it off.
I'm
Like,
a
turn it
weirdo.
off.
I don't fit in and I don't want to fit in.
Do you see my hat? Who does that?
Have you ever seen me without this stupid hat on? That's weird.
Alex knowing it word for word, that is hilarious.
I skipped a part in the middle, but that's fine.
Jesus
Yeah, I
fucking
don't know
Christ,
what it
I
is
lost
about
control already.
Sorry.
Oh my
Sorry.
But like,
Never had it.
but like, Maddie. Sorry, to get somewhat back on track. You were talking about Grease. Grease is like one of my all-time favorite movies. Like I love that movie. Like I like look at their relationships and I'm like, this is so unhealthy, but it's so fun.
It is, and there's so much singing and dancing and cuteness happening.
Yeah. All right.
It's
To any
Yeah.
kids listening to this, first of all, please go to bed. It's very late. We're a bunch of swearing adults. But secondly, it's okay to ingest a little bit of poison just as long as it doesn't kill you.
You can
Also,
have a
the fact
tiny
that you
little
just
bit of
call us
poison.
adults.
Just a little bit. Just like enough to
Self-care.
cause what butterflies think, or what do you think butterflies feel like? Just a little bit.
It's like no, but like this is actually a good thing to say. You're allowed to enjoy things even if you don't think they work in real life. You're allowed to enjoy things and also be critical of them at the same time.
Yeah, it's called
True.
balance. We have
Yeah.
to have it.
Yeah.
Alright, what is your final pick for best video game story?
My final pick for best video game story is this weird little indie Russian game that I played very recently, called Pathologic. For those who haven't heard of it, which I assume not, and I don't mean this in a pretentious probably haven't heard of it, but just like factually, this game has gone under the radar undeservedly. It deserves more attention than it's got. But
Yeah, I had certainly never heard of it before. Like you brought it up last time.
Pathologic is a game about this group of Russian doctors. You play as one of three doctors, the Bachelor, the Haruspex, or the Changeling, who each enter this strange unnamed Russian town in a geographically nondescript part of Russia in a time setting that does not exist. And essentially are tasked with 12 days to cure a plague in what is essentially a immersive sim, where you have to deal with food, you have to deal with hunger, you have to deal with sleep, and of course, since there's a plague, you have to deal with infection and immunity. It's one of the weirdest games I've ever played, and it has one of the best. The reason I bring it up today, though, is because it has one of the most engagingly written and well-told stories in a video game. I'm not going to say that it's a very cinematic game or that it's like a very emotional game, but it's a game that has provoked a lot of thought as I played it, and it's one that I don't know. It really got its hooks in me as I was playing it. It's one of the most it's a game where gameplay and storytelling are sort of done through the same thing. Like there's of course like story that is just directly you talking to someone else and getting their thoughts. And there's like the Fallout New Vegas thing, which I won't spend too much time on with this game, but there's like the aspect of characters having opinions on their world and of the plague. But one of the things this game does astoundingly well is really placing you in this world, in this story of mystery and anxiety through how you engage with it. It's I had this the last time we recorded this. I'm still having it now. I'm just having trouble putting it into words, but it's
Well, I guess just like walk through the story, or walk through as much as you'd want to share.
Okay. Basically, all right, I'm just going to start with the Haruspex, because the Haruspex story is insanity. The Bachelor story is essentially you play as a doctor who comes to the town trying to cure death. You hear of this man, Simon Kane, who's lived for 200 years, and you come to this town trying to learn more about him, and through that discover that there is a plague happening. And then that's that. But the Haruspex story starts out much darker and much wilder, forcing you into just a non-stop road of stress and anxiety. Basically, you start out the game, and the first thing that happens is you get stabbed to near death in the train yard. A bunch of people in the town have become convinced that you've committed a string of terrible murders in the town, and you're immediately tasked. You're bleeding to death, and you're tasked with this mission to survive not only the town, but also this horrifying, deadly plague that seems to have fantastical properties, while also like not being killed by the people of the town who are trying to kill you while trying to save them. One of the first missions of the Harrispecs. And H Bomber Guy talks about this, but and I'm going to talk about it too because it's insanity that this is the first quest you get in a game. Like, the first quest you get as the Harrispecs is you go into this. You're being chased down by a bunch of the townspeople, and you go hide out with this gang. Which is ran by this kid, Notkin. Notkin's like a teenage gang leader in this weird Russian little gang. And he says, listen, you're in a bad situation, but I'm also in a bad situation. I have one of my gang members is a rat. So here's the thing. I know you didn't kill the man you've been accused of murdering, but if you go and kill this snitch gang leader, I'll give you a gun. And don't want to tip my hat as to whether or not like that's an important item to have in a game where literally everything is trying to kill you for the first, I want to say 3 hours, but
a gun is a gun. I mean,
yeah, in a first-person shooter, it's literally in the name. Yeah. But so you go find this gang member, and you remember, oh right, Notkin's a teenager. The other people in his gang were kids. The gangster is a fucking child. This game... Quick, most games... like even Fallout, for all of its dark shit that Fallout does, Fallout will still never have allow you to kill a kid. Most RPGs will never even entertain the thought. Most RPGs don't even have kid NPCs because they don't want to entertain the idea of violence towards children in any way. And with good reason. Violence towards children is a bad thing.
Yeah.
But Pathologic puts you in a situation where it not only is telling you to kill a child, as you don't have to do it because it's an RPG. You don't necessarily have to do this. But it puts you in a situation where it's telling you to kill a child, and it is giving you a legitimate personal quandary, compelling you to do so. If you do it, you get a gun, and he has like a cure for the plague on him. There's this rare item in the game called Schmauder that if you get the plague, it cures it. And the fact that this game can do this with as little time as like each in-game day is about 2 hours, and this happens about halfway through the first day, so an hour into the game. Jesus. And the game has put you in a position where you have legitimate personal reason to murder a child.
Yeah. Oh fuck, that fast, huh?
Basically everyone I know who has played this game has either stopped after this or went through with it and then stopped shortly after. One of the things that the game does to sort of ramp up the anxiety is that you have no sprint button. You're basically forced to walk around this town. This is something that I was talking about before we were recording, how the gameplay in this game is not great, because it's not necessarily a hard game. It's just an extremely frustrating game to play because a lot of it is just walking across this town.
Yeah.
And
like, when was this game released again? Sorry?
This game came out in 2005, I want to say.
Okay, so yeah, there was obviously some limitations when it came to video games. Like that was around like the PlayStation 2 kind of GameCube era, but there were still limitations.
I mean, this was around the time that like the Source engine was at its peak. There was games like Half-Life coming out, Vampire Masquerade was coming out. Mm-hmm. Like, people were using the Source engine to make all kinds of games, and the Source engine is pretty flimsy, but they still made some pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Pathologic is not made on the Source engine. I have no idea how they got anything to work on their bare bones shite arse engine. It's one of the weirdest games because I talk about it and I love it so much. I love how much this game freaks me the fuck out. I love how much this game puts me in a position of legitimate anxiety and like stress about this town and about this story and about where I am and about like the characters and my relationships with the characters through little more than just how it plays. It's one of the best meshes of like how a game plays and the game's story that I think I've ever played.
Yeah, it's definitely like it sounds like, by the sounds of it, it's definitely one of those games that like you can go on for hours, but unless someone has like experienced it or experienced as much as you have, like,
yeah, I don't want to get into super spoilery stuff because I do think this is a game that I would recommend everyone try out. I'd be willing to get into spoilers maybe in a later
if you could break through the first mission, then
yeah, if you can get there's what my favorite thing is to look at the Steam analytics of this game. 13% of players have the achievement for getting through the first day.
Oh my god, that's incredible.
Yeah,
like here, like there, I was talking about like the first 5 minutes of God of War 2018 or God of War 4, and like hearing the recap of Pathologic, like Jesus.
Yeah, it's the Harrispex' story. Like the Bachelor's story can be pretty tough, but the Harrispex' story in that game is full of shit like that. It's basically a constant barrage of just barely trying to keep your reputation steady enough so that everyone in the town isn't trying to kill you, while also being put into situations where you really have to just kill innocent people in order to accomplish something, in order to just try it barely to save this town. And this is all especially interesting if you played the game through both that story and the Bachelor story, because the Bachelor story is almost a complete 180 to this. The Daniel story, the Bachelor story, is not super easy. It's pretty hard too, but it's hard for like completely other reasons. But one of the things that I like about this game and how it handles its characters is how well it characterizes these two protagonists. The Bachelor, conversely to the Harrispex is like, he's, aside from his violent campaign, he's an educated man. He's not a killer. He's not a murderer at all. He came to this town to see his father, who he hasn't connected with in a long time, and just ends up railroaded on this horrific nightmare path. Mm-hmm. But the Bachelor is a man who comes here with very lofty scientific aspirations, and then spends the whole rest of the game trying to just get the fuck out of the town. He doesn't really care about these people. He doesn't, and a lot of the dialogue choices show this. There's one of my favorite things about the Bachelor's playthrough is that his dialogue options just make him seem like an absolute dickhead. You don't have good choices. You don't have good dialogue choices. You basically have, do I treat people like an asshole this way, or do I treat people like an asshole this other way? He's great.
That a mood.
And I think there's this great interplay between the Bachelor's like lofty aspirations for a utopian future and the Harrispex, who has to really get his hands in the dirt and has to like live through the follies of people trying to build a utopian world. It's H-Bomb mentions this, but it's no coincidence that this game was made by a Russian studio, considering its very obvious implications with the Soviet Union.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot to stomach there. But
yeah, that's not even getting into the dialogue. The dialogue's a nightmare. The game has been translated several times, and the most recent version in the classic HD collection is considered the better one, but even that is barely describable to read.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, like it was released around 2005, so there are certain things you need to kind of bear with, right? And it definitely does sound, though, like it is a worthwhile experience. Like you had mentioned before, I think in the previous recording of this, that it was fairly cheap. It was like what, like $5 on Steam, I think.
It's like $1 on Steam when it's on sale.
There you go.
Yeah, it's a esoteric game that I can barely recommend, but it's $1, so I really can't give you any excuse not to play it. it's one of the most bizarre, interesting, and like just unique games that I've ever played with a fucking crazy story to go along with it, and some of the most interesting dialogue. There's some bits of dialogue in this game that I like. I'm trying to find a good one to read out right now.
Like those few moments that really stick with you.
Well, I don't know if I don't know if there's any specific moments that stick with me, but the dialogue is all written. It's very dreamlike. It's very theatrical. The game sort of has this sort of like novel-y sort of way of writing to it, where it doesn't really feel like it's a video game. It feels like you're sort of reading a book during a lot of the dialogue. It's very surreal, like a.
Yeah, I get you. I get that feeling. Yeah. Like a lot of people, hopefully, like for us at least, like people who don't play video games, like one thing that certainly connects a lot of us is reading, right? And there's certainly like, I don't want to say there's too much of a difference, and that's a whole other tangent that I don't really want to get into right now, but like when it comes to dialogue in a book versus dialogue in a video game, like there's such a like I feel like there's a pretty big difference between the two of them.
Yeah, like all right, here's this one. Try this one on for size. A hole in any body is an intimate thing. Even natural formans are better kept closed. You yawn, cover with a palm, or your soul will take off. You defecate, hide out of sight. You copulate, wait for the darkness. These taboos are imposed not by people, but by holes.
Shit. Damn.
Yeah.
Need to get that tattooed on me.
This is one I really like that The Bachelor says. I'm gonna fuck up the paraphrasement of this, but truth does not do as much good as half truths does evil.
Shit. Yeah, it's
something along those lines.
Yeah. I bet experiencing that too, like that, like I think finally reaching that point after playing through the game, or like however long you had been playing the game for, like yeah, that would probably hit a lot.
Reading, yeah, the dialogue is nuts. The dialogue is my favorite part of the game. Every line is sort of written with this
impact,
with impact and it's very dreamlike quality. The whole thing is organized like it's some kind of play it, and characters will talk as if they're all monologuing.
Okay, so I'll completely switch gears here. Sorry, y'all, but I'm gonna go all white girl on this and say Forrest Gump, because he starts out as just like you think, oh, he's just a dumb guy, like he's just sort of a simpleton, from the southern United States, and he just came from, small town with his mama, and then he turns into like this guy who just happens to go on all these adventures, and he's lived to tell the tale, and like you think, oh, he's not dumb. Like everybody calls him dumb, but he's never been dumb. Like he's just been naive, maybe. Like the guy is naive to a fault. Like he's in the middle of the Vietnam War, and he goes back to save like 5 other men, and there's helicopters like blowing the shit up out of a jungle. And, he's not one to, like, get out of the way and, fend for himself. He, like, goes the heck back in there and, he has to go and get Lieutenant Dan and bring him out alive, right?
Yeah.
And so in that way, you could say, the guy is super heroic. And maybe in sort of a naive, like, uninhibited way where it's not that he doesn't understand the danger. It's just like
he's perceiving it differently.
Yeah, he's got to do it because, he sees it as those people are part of his tribe.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever I think what makes that movie so profound is that, in my experience anyway, I don't think I've ever seen another character like Forrest Gump. And maybe that's just like the magic of Tom Hanks, is that he can play so many characters, and you know they always have this sort of like deeper than you ever thought possible sort of experience. Like it's almost like maybe a fatherly character or a fatherly figure who, you know, they've gone through it. Like I'm thinking of Captain Phillips now, like Tom Hanks and Captain Phillips. He's, you know, he's gone through it, and you know, he emerges in this state of like PTSD, and like he's an amazing actor, like needless to say. So yeah,
So
I don't know. Have you guys ever seen like a similar character to Forrest Gump, or?
See, what I was gonna, I guess, try to put a name on this one specifically. Like you were describing Forrest Gump as a naive character who has a lot of like, who still has a lot of like heart to him, and I was thinking like, I guess just like a naive character, if that makes any sense. Like naive, I guess a naive character is probably the best way that I can personally put it, because you know, a character as you've described is, you know, they're kind of like stuck in their own ways, but at the same time there's still enough about them to love. Right?
They're lovable. They're lovable characters.
See, I was thinking of Truman from The Truman Show.
Okay.
Yeah, because he, in his own way, like, you know, for you know, people who don't know what The Truman Show is, again, to quote Gabe, what are you doing? But you know, Truman is a character that is kind of secluded, and is the main focus of a TV show. And throughout his entire life, he's believed that everything around him is his reality. But then suddenly, it's like, oh shit, no, it's not. And he's lived that entire life completely, I guess, naively. That's not a word, but like he's been naive about his life he's been naive his whole life. And once he starts discovering things, I guess it's like that naive character's journey. I think maybe that's what you're trying to get at, Georgia, or at least maybe that's what I can put a name to it.
Like so in the Truman Show, I can't really remember but what's like the reaction upon discovering this new reality?
I remember like throughout the movie, it paces itself so that he's getting more and more confused, and then when eventually he does find out, it's a state of like, shit, all right, my life isn't exactly the way I thought it was, but maybe
like disappointed in a way.
I don't want to say maybe. I think he's more. I think he's more like, holy shit, I didn't realize that this was all fake.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's like the rug pulled out from under them.
Yeah, like, and that's the whole thing with naivety, like naivety too, right? It's like you thought you knew something, but really there's all of this out there, right?
Right. I feel like with Forrest Gump, it was a little different. It wasn't like the rug pulling out from under him. It was kind of like, oh, here's another thing that I've got to figure out. Like it wasn't really a shock. It was just like, okay, a new obstacle.
Yeah. So I guess as a guilty pleasure, for one thing, I guess we could just say Forrest Gump, but like for another thing, I think in terms of like nailing it, I would definitely, or I guess in terms of like putting a timestamp on it, basically, I think, the naive trope is definitely, I think, what I can kind of say for this.
Like dumb and lovable.
Yeah. Yeah. I second that. I love dumb and lovable characters so much. Like, I know it's obscure, but Carl Weezer from Jimmy Neutron is my favorite dumbass. Cosmo is my favorite dumbass from the Fairly Odd Parents. SpongeBob Patrick is a very lovable dumb. Yeah, he's a very lovable dumb fuck. There's so many, like, and the thing is too, like, I've gotten to the point where I know obviously a lot better than these characters, so like I don't know why I'm still laughing at like fart jokes and shit, but like, man, it just appeases the inner boy in me. It's just like it's always so funny to watch these things because it's like, oh, they're so it's so thing. It's like you just want to give them a pat on the head.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you guys? You guys have any lovable, naive idiots?
No, I think Forrest Gump is like the classic for me.
That's fair. Gabe, how about you in any anime? Is there a lovable idiot?
I think there's a lot that I could think of. God, I think the most obvious, the classic, would be Joseph Joestar from JoJo.
Mm.
I don't even want to call him a crouching moron hidden badass. He's pretty much a badass from the get go, but like other than that, he's such a lovable idiot. He's so dumb. I love him so much. He's the original himbo. Are we classifying himbos in this category here?
I think
We're not-
himbos. I think himbos
Okay.
would probably fit the definition.
Because I don't want to make the mistake of calling Forrest Gump a himbo. That's because that's not right. But my boy Joseph is definitely a himbo. I don't want to call him dumb because a lot of what JoJo is about is how good of a strategist he is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's more his flagrant disregard for etiquette and that sort of thing that makes him such a lovable idiot. Like this is a anime fight protagonist in a fighting anime who in the very first episode, right as like one of the villains is reeling up for a big showdown with him, he just fucking pulls out a gun and shoots him. It's so anticlimactic and hilarious, and it's like I can't call him an idiot for that because that's objectively the smart choice, but it's just so flagrantly in disregard of, I guess, etiquette that I can't help but call him an idiot for it.
Yeah.
And I love him. He's great.
Yeah.
Also, I'm gonna add into this on a completely unrelatable, lovable dummy, and it's Joey from Friends.
Oh, fair.
Fair.
But he's not like dumb. He's just like a goofy, cute guy.
Nah, he can be pretty dumb.
Joey's dumb.
Yeah, he's pretty.
Yeah, I'm like, that's
he's
the lovable
pretty
coming
stupid.
into you, Georgia.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Or like George from Seinfeld. But he's not dumb, he's just explosive.
Yeah. How ironic is it that like, and I'm gonna shit on this series for like just a good minute, but like, how ironic is it that like, no, how ironic is it that for a whole team or for like a whole apartment's worth of genius level people, I hate everyone in the Big Bang Theory.
Oh my god.
I think maybe that's just.
I didn't watch the rest.
Yeah, I think maybe that's just with. Yeah, maybe it's just with time, but like, yeah, I've really like the humor in the Big Bang Theory is really like aged for me.
I don't think I ever liked it. I may have liked it when I was like in middle school or something, but
yeah, that's where I'm coming from. Like that's where I'm coming from. Like, because I'm thinking like, you know, obviously they're all really smart, but in their own ways, they're all completely stupid.
Well, it's not like I think it's the opposite thing. I think it's sort of like the opposite of the appeal, because like with a character like Forrest Gump or JoJo or Truman, like they're outwardly dumb and they're very obviously dumb. Like they might not be like very knowledgeable people or traditionally intelligent, but like the way they carry themselves and act is like you can tell they're intelligent people.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with the Big Bang Theory, the opposite thing is happening, where it's like they're these smart people who are just so emotionally and socially unintelligent. And like I get the ideas they're supposed to be socially awkward, but like so much of that show is not is played like unironically, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
like a lot of their very negative, very obviously negative behaviors are sort of played up like the creators are like, oh yeah, no, this is a good thing, and this we can have a good time with this because they're smart guys, you know. And that's I really hate shows with that attitude. I really hate anything with that attitude.
All right. Well, I think we can entertain that tangent in a bit, but let's get to Alex. Please don't. She typed in the she typed in the chat
The
Sherlock.
words.
Yeah, she typed Sherlock. Please. I'm still holding on to my love for that show.
I don't want to take up too much of the time of the podcast, so I'm going to save until after the podcast to really let her rip about Sherlock.
So mine is the love triangle.
Oh my god, that's my third pick too. Yes, I'm glad we're in agreement that love triangles are the fucking worst.
Oh.
They are the most annoying and the fucking worst.
Like, okay, love triangles. Here's why I hate them. Because usually, like 90% of the time, they seem so forced.
Oh, like, yeah.
So, like, I'm talking Twilight level forced. Like, it's Jacob, Edward, and Bella level of, like, bullshittery of love triangles. It's just, it's almost like, well, I don't want people to know that the two main love interests are going to end up together. And I'm like, for the most part, we already know. It's fine. Instead of being like, we're going to have drama happen between the two of them. It's going to, like, maybe they're going to get into a fight. Maybe something's going to happen between them. No, we're going to introduce this half-naked werewolf dude.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on Twilight, yeah.
And I'm like, it's so, like, needless. Like, there's no reason to have a love triangle most of the time.
I think, like, love triangles back in, like, the Twilight era, they were already like, no, get the fuck out of here. No, we don't need you. Because they feel like you said, like, they don't really feel necessary. And nowadays, they really don't feel necessary anymore. But I guess going back to, like, the Twilight love triangle, like, that's really the one that kind of... I think, in my opinion, that's really the one that kind of popularized everything. So it was either you were Team Edward or Team Jacob. And quite frankly, like... And there were people who were, like, Team Bella, who doesn't need... Like, she doesn't need anyone. Or she doesn't need either of them. And it's, like... I don't want any of this anyway. Like... And like how and the handling of that entire love triangle too is just like we knew like I had only ever really read the first book, but I didn't even need to like continue on with everything to know that like Bella was gonna end up with Edward anyway.
Yeah, and like it just creates like a bunch of like needless drama instead of having like tension between the actual like two people in the couple. It just like introduces a third person so that they can blame their problems on this third person instead of actually like doing shit together.
Oh my god, yeah.
I'm like, okay, but like I was Team Jessica. You know, like one of her shitty like high school friends in the first book. That was me.
Yeah.
That was my life. Because I was like, you know what? Screw them. I don't need love triangle. I'm going to go with the girl who's like, I want this one guy to ask me to prom. It's going to happen. I'm going to make it happen. And it's going to be great. I was like yes.
Like, love triangles in general are just absolutely fucking terrible. Because in real life, like, to, you know, go off on a little bit of a tangent, like, in real life, love triangles, like, emotionally fuck you up. Especially when, like, you kind of really don't have anything else better to do. Like, and thing, like, that's no offense to, like, any, you know, teenagers watching this, but, like, when you were, when you were in, like, in high school and everything, like, God forbid you wind up in a love triangle, because then it's, like, it's just so much, it's just, like, if you have personally experienced a love triangle, then you could probably understand why, like, or you could probably relate to why Jessica and I hate love triangles in stories so much. And that is because they are just so fucking annoying.
Like
honestly,
like she's brought up already, like there's just a third person that kind of gets a lot of the blame anyway, and that isn't fair to them. They've probably got a lot going on, and to have all this shit too, like especially if the two like if it is a couple, right, and then there's a third factor, like it's so divisive, because then it's like who kind of cares for who at this point. And because you're marketing to like young adults who are young and very dumb, there's this whole kind of dramatic thing where it's like, everything gets blown out of proportion way too much, and feelings get very, very, very hurt, even though they're more just like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. And it's, at the end of the day, like when you kind of look back on a love triangle that you personally have experienced, it's like I can't do that noise properly. Like, just the fuck out of here. Yeah. So like there's the Twilight love triangle, that's the most kind of famous one. For me, in Throne of Glass, there was the love triangle between, or in the first couple books, there was a love triangle between Chaol, Dorian, and Selena. And it wasn't too forced, I think. Like, in my opinion, like Selena kind of was her own character, Dorian was his own character, and Chaol was his own character. And in Throne of Glass, in the first one, it was more kind of along the lines of Dorian and Aelin. They had a couple interactions here and there, but they didn't really get intimate. And how that was handled in the second book, it's like, oh, so now it's Selena and Chaol, which is perfectly fine. They had been hinting at that since the first one, but it didn't really ever ram it down my throat that, it was such a problem for Dorian, right? Like, there was maybe one interaction, but it didn't encompass the entirety of the book. Right, the love triangle was not the biggest priority of this or of these first couple books. It was more just along the lines of like, okay, so this relationship didn't work, let's now move it into another one. And it did it pretty well. Like, that is, I think, one of my sole exceptions of a love triangle not being forced, not being fucking annoying. God damn it.
Or just really likes love triangles. Real here.
Yeah. So I think when it comes to love triangles, it's certainly one that I just don't want forced down my throat. I don't want it to be the main thing that these characters kind of prioritize. And I think when it comes to kind of romantic contemporary fiction in general, like in John Green, you can kind of excuse it because that's, what the fuck else are they gonna do? But I've said in previous episodes, or I've said in a previous episode when we were talking about book adaptations, that I really am against unnecessary love stories in the first place. And a love triangle is the most unnecessary of unnecessary love stories. I fucking hate it.
Literally gets the most movies for being unnecessary. Like, there no way is a love triangle necessary for your book to be good. Like, John Green doesn't really use like a lot of love triangles. I found he usually uses like problems, like cancer or family stuff or whatever. He usually doesn't go towards the love triangle. It's very refreshing. I actually really enjoy that.
Yeah.
But I think Sarah J Maas, as you were saying earlier, she does a really good job of not doing like the Disney thing that a lot of YA is guilty of doing, where the girl ends up with the first guy she like falls in love with in a book. Whereas Sarah J Maas is like, wow, I went from Dorian to Chaol to Owen, and it wasn't ever like a love triangle or a weird love square thing, whatever. Yeah. It was like she went from like one to the other.
Yeah, like
there was tension. It wasn't a triangle, so it was okay.
Yeah, like it goes down to, I guess, when it comes to love triangles, like there's like as the age old cliche goes, there's always more fish in the sea, right?
Yeah.
When you as a guy are focusing on two completely different girls, or you as a girl focusing on two completely different guys, or if you're a girl focusing on two different girls, or like however the fuck love triangles work nowadays, like these two people, like this triangle that you're stuck in is not the end of your world. Like, it's not. There's so many better things waiting out there for you. In terms of storytelling for one thing, and in terms of like real life for another. Like we were talking about Throne of Glass, and the initial triangle between Selena, Dorian, and Kale was fine. Didn't feel forced, but ultimately it wasn't until you got introduced to Rowan where you really started to know a lot more about Aelin as a character, and what really brought out the best in her. Right? It's after that.
So going off like that point, Selena and then Aelin went through like Bryn and Kale and then Rowan, and like she finally settled on Rowan because they were like best match, I guess, like the most compatible. Because obviously, Kale disapproves of the way she handles things. Disapproves is putting it lightly.
Yeah.
But like that's a good way to like transition. So you have like a little bit of the triangle going on, but it's not like a full on Twilight level. It's more like, it's kind of like the Hunger Games love triangle.
Oh my god.
It's not really a triangle for me, because I was like, Katniss and Gil were like, but at the beginning, by the third book, it didn't work. It wasn't really a triangle to me. It was like she changed as a person, as a character, so much so that the first love interest she had was no longer the best.
Yeah.
So me anyway, people are gonna like hate me for this, but to me anyway, she made more sense with Peeta by the end of the books. And you had put them together at the beginning of the book, I would have been like, what are you doing? No, that's completely wrong. They don't go together. At the end of the book, so I don't know, a lot of YA love triangles don't really take into account like the character growth in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of like the love triangle solid throughout the entire book. And then like main character with like, whichever portion of the triangle is like popular or whatever. So, I don't know. There's like certain levels to it where it's like Twilight level, and then like Hunger Games level, and like kind of a Throne of Glass-ish John Green level where it's like not quite a triangle. It's not annoying.
Yeah. Like it's just because it's been so overdone, and often like at the center of a lot of these characters' development, a love triangle is just what makes it so annoying to me, at least. Like, I understand, coming out of situations and you learn a lot from it, but a fucking love triangle, god damn it. Like, especially when it comes to like grander kind of story arcs, when it comes to like the Hunger Games and the Revolution, or the Rebellion, or Throne of Glass, and quite literally saving all of Ardalan, like, well, not just Ardalan, but like the entire continent, basically. It's like, there's more important things to worry about, guys. You don't need to worry about this other two people that are fighting for your attention, because you don't fucking need that shit.
Like, to me, love triangles really don't make sense. If you truly loved either of the people in the left triangle, and there wouldn't be a triangle.
Yeah.
Because, you obviously love one more than the other.
Yeah. And if you are exactly equal. Yeah, and if you're that one character who is like, if you've written a character who is like trying to fight for one of the, like, one person in the couple, right? Whether it's the guy fighting for the girl, or or the guy fighting for the guy, in this sense, it's like, just you were going through so much heartache, and I feel bad for that character because it's like, oh man, you've really wasted a potential character just making them simp. Stop.
Yeah, like, honestly, like, what does Jacob do in Twilight? What does he add?
He imprints on the daughter.
Life.
He imprints on the daughter, and that's yeah. And like, fucking no,
sir. Like, excuse me, sir. You need to be put in prison. That's illegal. It's like
need, 2. you need to act like the bitch you are and get put down. I'm kidding.
Honestly,
I'm kidding. Oh, I'm kind of kidding.
Whatever her name was, the lady wolf.
Yeah, just like in storytelling and in real life, like I've already said, like there's so many other avenues when it comes to romantic interests, and I get that, you know, I get that when you're in high school or when you're in junior high, you're probably going to be liking someone and someone might like you back, and you're going to get stuck in a real life love triangle. But if you've experienced it, it's fucking annoying, and I do not need to relive any past trauma from my own previous love triangles in my books. No, I don't need that shit. And that's not the reason why I hate them. There's a lot of reasons why I hate love triangles, but that's not it. This is getting way too personal. But
triangles for me, I mean, I don't know. They seem like a lazy way to add tension between two people that are in a relationship together. It seems kind of the easy way out. Like, hey, we're gonna add this third person. I'm like, no. Have these two characters and you put them together, or they put themselves together because characters do whatever they want. You put them together. You made them compatible or whatever. You chose that, or they chose that, or whatever. And then all of a sudden, instead of having them with each other or each other, which usually happens in real life relationships at some point in some way, shape, or form, instead of doing that, happens in real life, you just bring in this convenient third person, just like drop them down in Google Maps, and you're just like, wreak havoc, have fun, see you later. Yeah. I'm like, excuse me, no, do not take the easy, lazy way out. Take these two people and have them have their own problems, and you have to deal with it. Either they stay together or they don't. There's no third person.
Yeah. So, I think that's our biggest one. Just don't write a fucking love triangle. If I have to underline the word fucking in front of fucking love triangle like 100 times so you can understand it, please don't do that. Don't subject your characters to that. They deserve better than, you know, that kind of shit.
It's not like you have to keep your character with like the first person they end up with. No.
Yeah.
You have relationships end, can move on. Instead of, you know, doing it where, oh, I'm in a relationship, but he left me in a forest, so I cried for like an entire night in the forest. And this other guy, he's suddenly hot and we're friends and he likes me. Maybe my super hot left me boyfriend came back. Now what do I do? It's like, no, I don't need any of that.
Yeah. Like, it worries me too because I don't want to sound like a hypocrite, but I am trying to not write my own love triangle right now. Or at least I'm hoping to not plan one, because this like my book right now, Xeno, is I'm planning to make it into a series, obviously with more characters and whatever. And I swear I will I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do if I end up being my own liar and writing a love triangle. I'm probably just gonna cry. Because it's like,
and I mean,
the injustice I did to myself.
Yeah, it's hard for writers. Like I said when we were talking about dead parents, like that is something that I recognize in my own writing as something that I kind of start with. You know? Like, I'm building a character or a story, I'll kind of start with that, and that's like the first block, I guess, to like building the rest of the character in the story.
Yeah, it's something that you shouldn't. Sorry, go ahead.
And then like I did originally have a love triangle in one of my stories because I'd read it, so I was like, hey, you know, try this. Then once I'd written it, I was like, this is crap, trash, and I hate it. I went back and I like tweaked it, and I made it so that the relationships were like not a triangle, they were almost connected. It was like they were passing each other almost, right? Like they were still connected, the 3 characters, but it was like seeing each other.
Yeah.
Rather than a triangle. So like there are ways around it, and like to get the words down, you have to write in the dead parents, or you have to write in love triangle. Like do it and then go back and change it and fix it. It is so widely used for a reason. It can help you like figure out where you want to go or direction you want to take it in. Like if you're writing and that comes up, then like don't feel so horrible about it. Keep writing and then go back and change it and fix it up and like polish it. It is useful, I guess. Writers.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Like, it's something that you can start with, but it's something you shouldn't carry forward, especially like if you're doing a full series, or whether you're doing like a big long project or a big long book or anything. Like don't make a love triangle the most consistent thing in that story unless like that's your early draft of it. Because love triangles have come and gone through so much storytelling, whether it's like even outside of YA, it's one of the most common storytelling tropes that you can put your characters through. And quite frankly, I've had enough of it, and Jessica's had enough of it too. So,
it's like if I pick up a YA book, I'm like reading like the back, the little blurb that they put on, and they're like, and so meets this guy who lives across the street. Then 2 days later, she meets so the dangerous guy who drives a motorcycle or something. I'm immediately like, no.
Yeah.
No, I'm not here for it. I'm not vibing with this. Please take this elsewhere.
Everybody know who Robb Nash is?
No.
I do.
Okay, so Robb Nash, when he was in high school, he was in a bad car accident, and to sum up a really long, impactful story, he was pronounced dead on arrival, but then when they got him to the hospital, realized he was still alive. So they patched him up. They never thought he was going to wake up, though, and then he did. A couple months later, wakes up out of his coma and goes through this incredible like recovery process, physically recovering and mentally recovering and everything. Ended up in like severe depression and such, but when he worked his way through it, and I'm summing things up really easy because like it's a major story. Like his story is kind of major, at least in my opinion. But after that, he turned to music, and he started a band called Live on Arrival, and they would sing songs about like his story of depression and other people's stories. There's one song called Hello Goodbye that's about a gentleman that they met at a homeless center or a soup kitchen or something, that he was an alcoholic who, when he drank, he became abusive, and then he'd wake up, like he'd get up the next morning and feel bad about it, and he'd apologize, but it was this cycle that happened over and over again, and suddenly he just decided that he needed to leave. So he left his wife and everyone, because if he was stayed in that place, he would never get clean, he would never stop drinking, and the cycle would never end.
Mm-hmm.
And these stories soared to the top of the charts and everything, and then he was approached by I think schools and such, that they were like, hey, we want you to come perform to these youth because like you're reaching them and everything. We want you to talk to them. And his record label was like, no, you can't do that. And he was like, well, I'm going to anyway. So he tore up his contract. He was like, had nothing. He went with his guitar and and his buddies to play at schools, at detention facilities and everything. And eventually like the record label was like, yeah, we want you to come back with us. You can keep doing what you're going to do. We're just going to like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Independent?
No, we're gonna like work with you for free. Like they recorded for him and everything like that.
Definitely not the word that I just said. My bad.
No. And he's got like they've got a van, they've got an entire crew. Their website's called the Robb Nash Project, and they go talking to schools and talking to the students because like they were there. These stories are their stories, these stories are your stories. And some of the songs are very like literal, like they've got a song, it's not on their website anymore, and but it's called Bullet, and it's a song of a guy that Rob went to high school with who committed suicide, and they've got a line from his suicide note in it, and it's a very like it's a heavy song, but they've also got songs that are like figurative, like One Last Breath, which is like, if I had one last breath, what would I use it for?
Mm-hmm.
Which is like these thoughts that went through Rob's head after when he was recovering, like, what was the last thing I said to my parents? What was the last thing I said to my friends, kind of things.
Holy shit. Yeah, it's been a while
like,
since I've like thought about like the emotional weight in his music.
Yeah. Some of the stories like he tells are very like, you can tell exactly what the song is trying to tell you, and others it's more figurative and it's more like these are the same feelings that I've had kind of songs, like, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think like going briefly to I think kind of going back into what Alex said about Pink and what I said about BTS, it's good to have role models tell stories in music or through music, because obviously with music there's a lot of people that you can reach, but personally like it's then important to like really live out the life that you were doing, right? Or really live out the life that you were speaking. And with Robb Nash, when he visited my high school, like I could definitely tell that like he really does care.
Oh yeah.
And
he's tattooed his arms. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
He's gotten like over 900 suicide notes from different people at different schools, and he's tattooed the signatures on his arms. Both of his forearms are covered with these signatures.
Damn.
Mm. And that's like,
it's.
What was the reason for that again? Because I know that he did that. I just don't remember why.
Part of it was that like so many other people were getting lyrics from his songs tattooed, and the logo, which is like it's a heartbeat, like the straight line and then the pointed heartbeat line. That logo and lyrics from his songs tattooed on themselves to be like, you've made this impact on me, kind of thing. And then he got these tattooed to show their impact on him, but also because it's a physical sign that like you're not the only ones feeling like this. These people felt this way too. I felt this way too.
I feel like that's also a way to be like, look, even if you feel like no one else will ever remember you, I will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And one of his songs, it's song is it? One moment. I have it written down here. But in their music video, it shows clips from him going to these different schools and tearing up suicide notes with the students who give them to him. And it shows clips from people who've made these videos on YouTube and sent them to him of them ripping up their notes. And the music video cuts to this scene of a dad who's saying, I want to see these letters. I want to see these notes. I want to know that we've saved someone. We couldn't save my son, but I want to see that we've saved someone else's.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah.
That's really good, I think, for a lot of I definitely like love hearing whenever people do these kinds of things, like when they speak on, well, I guess when they don't just like speak on mental health, but like it really does change somebody. Like obviously with a lot of influencers on YouTube, it can be hit or miss, but like I guess Jacksepticeye is a good example of like a good role model, right? And this is kind of going off on a small tangent, but like I'll be quick. Yeah, Jacksepticeye is a really good role model, and we just need more of that. And I think one so personal with Robb Nash is great because, you know, like we had already said, music certainly gets to people a lot more than other kinds of stories do.
Yeah.
And with music, there's so much that you can tell. And when you're using that to help people, that's great. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's a good way to tell your story in a way that other people can relate to.
And I think like it's also not just a good way of telling your story, but like it's a good way of allowing people to open up about their own personal story, which can be very, very difficult to do. So,
and to anybody listening to this and realizing if I got details wrong about any of these stories, I apologize. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dean.
I last saw Robb Nash.
Dean, you're also gonna have to put like a huge like trigger warning for like suicidal discussion on this video.
Yes,
Sorry,
definitely.
yeah.
And to Robb Nash, if for some reason you were listening to this, thank you for visiting my high school in grade 7. I unfortunately haven't kept up with you in a while, but like your music is great. Keep doing what you're doing. You guys ready for this? Hold on.
Let's go.
Speaking of fucking.
Oh boy. There we go. That's a segue.
Hell yeah. Segue on her.
Hell yeah.
So to close or to kind of wrap up the thing on Sarah J Maas's writing style, we have to discuss the thing that has gotten a lot of notoriety in regards to her style, and that is her sex scenes. Oh Jesus God, her sex scenes.
I'm like, I know we have to talk about them, but at the same time, I'm like, we've talked about them enough.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like a serious discussion either. We can just meme them.
Oh yeah, I was figuring. It's like I've heard so much about the sex scenes. I did not think we were going to have anything remotely approximating a serious discussion around them.
Yeah,
they're just ridiculous, and there's so many of them.
There's so many of them.
This is my problem. It's like I don't like reading sex in books, but that makes me biased towards just hating sex scenes in general. So I don't really know if these are like well written. Are these well written?
They're
sex
not
scenes?
no. They're not well written. They are not well written.
I don't know if she intentionally meant them to be as memey as they are, but like they get fucking stupid. So
they get fucking.
Oh yeah.
Oh, they fucking.
They get really stupid. So
you know what they say? They go at it more than Catholic rabbits.
Jesus.
Yeah, they do.
Oh my God. Okay, so I guess we're not going to have a logical discussion on these sex scenes. So let's just talk about the ones that are like the most stupid.
So
shall we mention the freaking velvet wrap steel?
Yeah, velvet wrap steel.
354.
It's like
page 354. Empire Storms.
You want to read it out?
No.
Please read
that
it.
scene is so long. Do you know how many pages this goes on for?
How many?
Actually, it might only be. Wait, hold on. Let me count a second. They start.
Is this the like 6 hour
350, and then
it's like the 6 hour beach sex scene?
Oh God!
Is that how long they go? Anyway, it's like 7 pages.
Be 3 hours. Oh my God!
7 pages is so a lot.
That's so many pages.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure, like in the book, it's literally like at least 3 hours of like sex straight on the beach, a sandy beach. I feel like I need to emphasize that.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
It specifically says 3 times on the beach, twice in the sand, then a third out in the warm waters.
Oh god.
Okay, so
it
I'm
says
getting it
three,
wrong.
three rounds. Yeah, they
3
went and did it
rounds.
in the salty ass sea.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on, wait. That brings up a whole other question. So they had sex in the ocean, and they said it was warm water. I have concerns about that because I've been in the ocean a lot. It ain't warm unless someone's
Well, I mean, she's a hot person, so she could be warming it.
Yeah, she has fire
No, she
magic.
has no. See, from what
And
I
their
remember from
powers
those
are
scenes,
going.
every time she climaxes, she just bursts into flames.
Burst into flames.
Wait,
yeah, that's the thing. It's like both,
what?
Yeah,
both of them are
no. Are you
I don't
forgetting
remember
this?
this.
Are you forgetting this, Alex? This happens
Hang
every
on.
time.
So
Every time Aelin
she
comes.
she turns on fire.
Yeah, no.
Okay, I'll try and find something.
Oh god.
Maybe it's a good thing she didn't have her magic when she fucked Kale that one time.
No.
So that was while we wait for Brooke to read out.
Okay, fuck. They
That-
don't even like get to fucking before it's a roaring wind full of ice and fire. Oh, ice and snow blasting around them. And all he's doing is stroking his dick.
That's some
Like they're
crazy
not even like
foreplay.
fully doing
God.
it yet.
Oh my god.
I think it's embarrassing for me because I have that tab bookmarked.
You
I'm like,
smut lord.
yeah. So in the moment, I'm like, this is interesting. I didn't like it. I was just like, that's one way of writing a sex scene.
Yo.
All right.
I found a thing. Release blasted through her like wildfire, and though she could not remember her name, she remembered Rowan's as she cried it while he kept moving, bringing every last ounce of pleasure. Yeah, he fucked the name out of her.
What the fuck? What?
Guys, as she's climaxing, fire searing the sand around them to glass. She melted the fucking sand into glass.
Maybe that's why they moved into the ocean.
Oh my
Is that
god.
what it's called?
They cooked up some fish, man.
Yeah.
Oh, she brings down lightning too. Lightning joining wind and ice over the water.
Oh my god.
Lightning and flame danced on the sea. The lightning continued to strike, silent and lovely, even after he stilled.
Oh my God. I hate this. I hate this a lot.
Yeah. This isn't even thing. This is like the most memey, but I think the one that is like really fucking memey is Dorian and Manon's later in the book. That is so
I hate
memey.
that scene.
Yeah,
I hate that fucking scene so much. I've gone on so many rants about that scene. I hate
Okay,
it.
hang on.
All right, let's hear it.
I think it shook me to my bones enough when you told me that Manon had like a het relationship. If you're gonna tell me that Manon has like vanilla sex, I'm gonna be so angry.
It's not like vanilla.
Oh,
but
come on.
she-
It's kind
but
of
she-
vanilla.
It's not
Yeah.
fully vanilla, but also she's the bottom, which like come on.
Nah, yeah.
Like she's
Well,
a
she does
dom
finish-
and we all know it.
Yeah, but she
Yeah.
does finish
You don't
off
have
with the.
claws like that, and
Yeah, she should be. Scratchy. But she does finish off with saying, "Unless you would like to learn precisely what parts of me are made of iron, the next time you touch me, I decide those things." So
Great.
I'm thinking that's saying that
good
she
job,
has
Megan.
iron in her pussy, or
No, the teeth on the bottom match the teeth on the top. That's all
Oh
I'm
my
saying.
god.
there you go.
Oh,
You gotta have your
God.
stalagmites and your oil. Fuck. What are the other ones?
Stalactites?
Stalagmites and stalactites?
I think so.
Are they both the same thing?
Guys, I
Okay,
don't want
yeah,
to
you
think
gotta have
about
those.
this.
wait,
I bookmarked that because it's so fucking
Okay,
stupid. She's
she has
like,
like stalagmites. Damn, shoddy. Okay.
oh,
No,
but it's because Dorian has his invisible hands, right? So he can just like touch
Yeah.
her without
Okay.
actually touching her.
Where the fuck did that come from?
You got invisible hands.
Yeah, I'm remembering this now. Where the fuck do the invisible hands come from? Throughout
It's because it's no.
This
It's
chick got stance.
this isn't like the third book when this happens, right? When he or like at the end of the second book, maybe I don't remember exactly. But we discover that basically, Gabe, just because you haven't read the books, what happened is there's these 3 like obsidian pillars or something that have been put up across the continent, and while they're up, they kind of like have like between them is like a no magic area. Like magic doesn't work in that area, basically. So like Aelin can't use her magic. No one can use their magic except for Dorian, who didn't even know he had magic, but then at some point he discovers he has magic, which manifests itself in these like invisible hands that he can use to like push things and do stuff with. It's really fucking weird. It's a really
JoJo? Does the series just become JoJo at one point?
You would think.
I wish.
It's kind of annoying that he just like has all of the powers.
Yeah.
Like everything. He can do everything. I just realized also when he gets his shape-shifting power down later, Madden can have sex with any fucking one she wants.
Hold on. He has a shape-shifting power? When does that happen? Oh, thanks.
Oh, you're not
thanks,
there yet?
Brad.
I'm sorry.
No.
Oh, yeah.
I read the
Bummer.
first chapter of Kingdom of Ash. That's it.
I don't
Dorian hasn't
remember
even
when that
showed up
happened.
yet.
Just you didn't
I
hear
don't remember
anything.
when that happened.
I don't care
Is the
about
series not
spoilers.
over?
Why do you think I care about spoilers? Who do you think I am?
So yeah, he
Wait,
can
hold on.
shapeshift.
Yeah.
So she can literally have sex with anyone she wants.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a bonus.
I mean, she should be having sex with a lead instead because they
I
have better
know.
chemistry.
God, I was so
Hard
mad when they
agree.
were like, we're gonna pair up Dorian and Manon, and we're gonna pair up Elide and Lorcan. I'm like, fuck you. No.
I fucking hate
we were having
Lorcan.
we were gonna have a perfect lesbian couple, and you went and did that shit.
I'm
Get your
like,
Petra
I'm
out
like,
here.
everything we've ever seen about Manon, and we're supposed to believe that she likes men. Come on. Come on.
All right, a minute or
Ugh.
like an hour and a half into the recording. That's when I lost control. Okay.
You were never in control.
We'll come
I
back
know.
to this later.
All right.
You feel in charge.
Okay. So if we thought that the Throne of Glass sex scenes were stupid, then enters A Court of Thorns and Roses with some very fucking stupid
Yes.
sex scenes. I don't even want to talk about Crescent City. It's all in thing. It's all in fucking that's in Akotar where the shit gets stupid. And it's so stupid that one like it's it's so stupid for two reasons. One, everything that like all the noises that Alex just made, and two, one of my favorite booktubers literally got a huge boost in her career because she just trashed the Akotar sex scenes.
You're so bad.
They're fucking
I-
awful.
I only know of two of them, but the two that I've heard of like have given me carnal nightmares.
To be honest, I don't even know if I remember the rest of them. It's because those two stand out so fucking much.
I just remember the one where they fuck in the middle of a battlefield and one where they're sky fucking.
Feyre blows Reese in the middle of a battlefield. I don't think they have sex.
Wait,
No,
what?
Brooke, like real shit.
Oh no, it's worse.
It's a lot worse.
Yeah.
Wait,
I wasn't expecting it to be worse.
Yeah, no, so try explaining that to someone who's never like thing, and that's what your response is. Yeah, so I think that's in the third book, Court of what the fuck is it called?
Who knows?
Rings and Ruin. Yeah.
Getting a blowjob in the war.
There it is.
Yeah.
Talk about time and place. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Is that the fire dick scene? I think that's the fire dick
I think
scene.
that's the fire dick
So
scene.
what?
There's more fire dicking? Oh no.
That's there was already. Wait, how many times has this happened?
No. Like she describes his dick as a fire dick, like in the text. Not that there's actual fire. That's how it's
You got a
described.
fire
No,
cock,
she's
bro.
literally going, that's a
Ridiculous.
fire cock. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
I'm not. That's the
No.
literal,
That's a fire dick, my
literal
guy.
word
We
that she
cannot
writes
make this shit
in
up,
the
bro.
book.
Is fire cock.
That's yikes. I don't like that. That shouldn't be in that book.
Yeah.
We
Well,
haven't
that's
even
not-
talked about the sex scene in A Court of Frost and Starlight
Oh
yet.
god. Oh no.
But
Okay.
let's talk about the flying one first.
That one was like, I think that sex scene alone made me think, God, what the fuck? What the
I'm just saying, SJM has some very interesting fetishes, and she is not afraid to let people know.
You can imagine. What? How do you even come up with like having sex in the sky? Do you literally like? Did you fuck in like an airplane bathroom to have that idea?
Sky High Club.
Oh yeah,
It's
the Mile
probably
High Club,
like I
Mile High,
said,
that's what it is.
fetish.
My bad.
She's got some interesting fetishes and kinks, and she's not afraid to let people know.
How much biting is there in these books?
Oh my god. Oh my
A
god.
lot of biting?
Biting is a
All the
crutch
biting?
move.
It's literally okay.
Purring and
No, because
biting?
you know how in Throne of Glass, like Rowan and the other, for some reason, all the male fairies, all of the male fairies can like turn into animals, and the female ones just turn into like prettier versions of themselves.
Yeah,
progressive feminism, right there, guys.
Yeah, great message. Thanks, SJM.
But the same thing applies to the fairies in the court books, which I think in her mind just makes them seem cooler and more animalistic or something. So there's a lot of biting. There's like, I think Tamlin turns into like a big wolf or something. I don't remember. And I don't remember what Rhys. I don't remember if Rhys had a transformation actually. Did he?
I don't know. I didn't read past book 1. So
Oh yeah, you don't even know anything about Rhys except what he did in book 1.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I mean, like, I know this series, right? I just can't like pinpoint exact moments, such as
Yeah. I was just gonna say, basically, they all can turn into animals, and as a result, they like to bite each other a lot when they have sex. A lot. Which I mean, like, own your kinks, girl, but I don't want to read about them.
Yeah. At that point, it's just like, you know, I'll get to this commentary in a second, but Alex, do you want to explain the A Court of Frost and Starlight scene? If you haven't already.
I mean, I described it to you guys all, I think, but I'm just, yeah. So, again, we talked about this briefly earlier. She has, like, this thing with, like, mental bonds. So, in the court books, Feyre and Rhys have, like, this mental bond. They can, like, send each other messages down this mental bond. Very important. At some point in the series, I don't remember when this happened, because I don't remember the plot of the second or the third book, but at some point in the series, Feyre gets, like, an image of what her future child is going to look like. Anyway, in A Court of Frost and Starlight, I think Rhys and Feyre are on like a honeymoon or something to that effect, basically. And so Rhys has this like cabin out in the mountains. And, you know, Feyre, they're like going there for their honeymoon. Feyre makes him some food, and apparently that like solidifies their mating bond. We haven't even talked about mating in these books yet, which is a whole other thing that I have a lot of issues with. But anyway, she cooks him a meal, which solidifies their mating bond for some reason. And then they start fucking in the cabin, as you do. It's their honeymoon. I will, you know, let it slide this one time. Except they're like going at it up on the wall for some reason. And you know, it's getting really good right as things are about to like, you know, hit.
Don't say it's good. No, it's not.
Right as things are about to hit the peak, you know, Feyre's like, oh, I have a good idea. So she like reaches out and touches like Rhys's face and like sends down their mental bond that they have a picture, like an image of their future child. And that is what causes Rhys to go over the top. And he comes so hard that it shakes the whole mountain. It shakes the whole mountain.
You have told me about this before, but I think
told you like 3 times, yeah.
I think every time you told me about it, I block it out, and I'm like, nope, not remembering that. And then
I don't blame you. I wish I could forget.
Oh God.
Ew.
Oh my God. Okay.
It's so bad. I still can't, like, why did she think that was okay?
And I'm like,
what
here's
is
the thing.
YA offers and doing stuff like that? First it was Stephanie Meyer with like Jacob's weird baby thing, and now it's Sarah J Maas with like a fucking Minority Report baby vision.
It's like here's the thing, right? It's like I understand that some people have like a pregnancy kink or whatever, which I don't get. But again, you do you.
What the fuck?
But like that's not even a pregnancy kink. That's like the face of my unborn child is what caused me to orgasm, and it's very uncomfortable. Like
Yeah, like there's like getting off on the idea of getting someone pregnant, and there's getting off on having like a fucking "that's so Raven" vision.
Oh my god. And you
anyway, I'm sorry about my explanation, but I have to make it memey because otherwise I'm gonna cry.
And like you have to wonder why these sex scenes are still being marketed towards a young adult audience. I want to spend like a couple minutes talking about like how it applies to our book, which is also what we did with the Hunger Games era episode. So I've stated on podcast before that Porter is bisexual, Magna is lesbian, as well as a few other characters that are openly like, or at least I'm like I've stated before that like they are very much queer, and that in no way was meant for me to be like, you know, this is going to be attracting solely the queer audience. Like I obviously want it to be a good story in general for everybody, but I understand that having a bisexual protagonist, a lesbian deuteragonist is important, and it has been more than anything my sole responsibility to make sure that I am translating them properly. And the definition of properly has always been just write them as people. Or like write them as good characters. Like don't force the fact that they, you know, don't force the fact that it's a same-sex relationship, because, you know, as much as I would rather not have a bunch of homophobes reading my book, you know, there's probably a lot of young readers who are still undecided, and at least that book gives them something, right? It teaches, like, I would hope that it teaches young people to be, you know, like, you could be queer, you could be straight, whatever, but like ultimately just learn how to respect people, learn how to respect beliefs that aren't yours. But I think I'm just going on a wild tangent. But Alex, how about you? When it came to, because you've talked about the Diamond Dagger so much, and you've mentioned that Aleje is Arrow Ace.
Mm-hmm.
She
sure is.
Yeah. So talk about that. Like, how is it the discussion of queer baiting and all that? Like, how is that applying to the Diamond Dagger?
Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, I don't really know how to say this, but it definitely wasn't like a decision that I made for Aleje to be Arrow Ace. It was more like I woke up one day and was like, oh, she's Arrow Ace. I just didn't realize before now. I have this experience a lot with my characters where I'll just be like, oh, wait, they are whatever, and I didn't notice until now. But like, I think with Aleje, it was actually, in terms of like writing about queer characters, I feel like I'm definitely on the side where all my characters are queer unless stated otherwise. But it's still something that I can't just say that and expect people to get that. Like, it has to be written into the text.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something that I've been working on as a writer, is how do I make it obvious that this character is Arrow Ace? How do I make it obvious that this character is a lesbian? How do I make it obvious that this character is trans, you know? And like go through and make sure that like my words as, you know, the word of God, if I ever get to that level, is like accurate to what's in the text. Because, you know, it's one of those things where like a lot of times there's like all this debate about whether or not you trust the word of God. In this case, word of God referring to the things that the author or like writer has said outside of the text itself.
Mm-hmm.
And like this is where certain things come into play, where a producer of a show will be like, oh, this character's gay, but if that's not in the text itself, if it's not backed up, it's really easy for people to disregard, death of the author is a thing that should be applied in some cases, but in other cases, I think that death of the author should be applied in a lot of cases, because if it's not in the text, then it's not in the text. So if you're going to say that a character is gay, they have to be gay.
Mm-hmm.
Commit. Damn it. Don't be a coward.
Don't also change canon how many years later just to suit the audience, because we can see right through that too.
Not naming names, but if you know, you know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure a lot of us know by now, or at least like some of the more infamous examples. But we don't need to touch on that. Well, we can.
If you know, you know.
We can trash on what we know eventually, or we can have a full episode to trash on what we know eventually. But I did want to get someone else's perspective on this, and that is Gabe's, who has been relatively quiet for this episode, because and that's not without intention. So Gabe has said before we started recording that he identifies as straight, but he is very much a straight ally. So I'd love to hear like how he feels on queer baiting after what we talked about and what he knew about before.
Queer baiting is a subject that's like pretty new to me. I think the only examples that I like really knew of before going into this episode were I'd heard of like the Supergirl fiasco before. I think Sherlock was the only one that I was like truly familiar with in terms of like other people making reference to it. Because I'd seen the show. I'd seen how weirdly preoccupied Moffat is with drawing attention to like having characters be like, oh, two men, oh, how queer, and like there's that whole scene. I was resin bringing up. There's that whole scene where like it's like the fan fiction circle or whatever, and they're all debating how Sherlock survives. And they like have that weird bit how one of them like theorizes that Sherlock and Moriarty were like in a romantic cahoots. And it's like a weird jab at the fan base for shipping characters that they queer coded.
Oh yeah.
I didn't even touch on Moriarty, but Moriarty's a whole other bag of worms.
Moriarty is a big flamboyant mess, and I don't know what they were thinking.
I mean, it comes down to queer coding villains, to try and draw in a queer audience. It's another super problematic part of Sherlock. Add it to the list.
Oh God, we learn something new every day when we trash on something. Sorry, Gabe, what were you saying?
I think like as a straight author who's written gay characters and trans characters, like I would say like there are a lot of people who are like, oh, you're things. Oh, it's just you're just thinking too hard about it. Oh, it's just your own personal interpretation. I think it's very difficult to intentionally write a character or a dynamic between two characters that is so deeply gay, but then like isn't.
You'd be surprised.
Mm-hmm.
I have several examples I could name if you want me to. Tolkien, Rick Riordan, Sarah J Maas.
Oh no, I'm not talking about like queer baiting. I'm talking about like because like.
Yeah,
I am talking about queer baiting, but I'm saying like it's very hard to unintentionally write like that sort of dynamic. Like I think it's once you like speak to people who are actually experienced with this sort of thing and speak to people who are a part of the LGBT community, like the writings on the walls become a lot clearer, and you can start to see like the stuff like it's like Poe and Finn, their whole relationship. You can start to see it for what it is. Like, don't even bring this up. Poe sees Finn again in the first movie, and he's like, he sees Finn wearing his jacket, and Finn's like goes to give him back his jacket, and he says, "No, keep it. It suits you." He fucking bites his lip harder than I have ever seen anyone bite his lip. It's fucking absurd.
I mean, acting choices also.
Oh my
But yeah.
god. Oh my
Like,
god.
it's if you just Google Poe lip bites, it's one of the first results. It's like so intense.
All right,
yeah,
well, I'm gonna do. I know what I'm gonna do after a podcast.
yeah, that's just one of the major ones, and I think like I don't know. I think it's something that if you are going to write, if you're going to try to write gay characters, I think you do have to like make it explicit. You shouldn't try to just do it if you're not going to write gay characters because like you think that's the right move for those characters. If you're just writing them for like you want to have the like a quota, or you think like it'll get you marketing points, or you want to have gay characters for a bit, like just don't do it. Just don't like. It's better to just not have the representation if you're going to have bad representation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, honestly, like I think like in terms of queer baiting, it is a marketing tool, and if you're going to use it, then use it properly.
Yeah.
Like just especially like I think it's like no matter what, like you may be like a queer author, but even then it's still I think it would still be important to to discuss queer characters with other queer writers. Like as a queer writer, like I talk to Alex, who is also another queer writer, and we bounce ideas and work off of each other all the time, and that is what's helping our stuff get better.
Yeah, and it's also like on that note, because even as like a queer person, you're only one type of queer, and there's so many different types. Like, I would identify as queer myself, but like I'm not like trans. I'm not like a lesbian. I haven't gone through like those specific experiences, and so I feel like if you're especially with like trans and like non-binary characters, if you're not someone who's been through that experience and you want to write about those kinds of characters, you really need to talk up to other people who have had those experiences, because otherwise you're not going to be able to write it well.
Mm-hmm. And even if you are even if you do identify as bisexual or gay or more or less just queer in general, it would still benefit you to reach out to the people in your community. I can kind of write from the perspective of a bisexual writer, but that doesn't mean I am 100% certain that Porter will turn out a good representative of that community, because it is just still my perspective, and my perspective could be wrong. So
yeah, and it's also again, you're a man, your character's a woman, so there's also going to be that dynamic. And even if there wasn't, like, you're still like, again, this comes back to queer people are people. Yeah. Every queer person is going to be different and have vastly different experiences, even if they like identify under the same label. And so yeah, it's definitely very important to talk to other queer people. Yeah. Not even just like queer writers, just like queer people in general, and get their input on that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That's another thing too, actually, like while we're still discussing this, it is not like just because a character is queer does not make them that completely. Like
yeah.
I've kind of phrased it terribly, but like queer characters are not solely queer. There's so much more to them. Like queer characters can be badass fighters, or like smooth talkers, or very shy, timid people. They can be world saviors. They should be world savers, honestly. And as people, like, I don't know why that's such a hard thing to comprehend. Like it's thing, like it is still something that like boggles my mind, and it's gonna take us a while to get there, but like that's why it starts, I think, with us, or like with writers like us, to define the example that we want, and for just to better educate ourselves on queer stories. Like we're aware of what queer baiting is. We know what, like, how people use it, and we know the botched examples of it, so we gotta do better. We should.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I don't really have much else to contribute, or don't really have anything else to kind of add on to that.
I have one further contribution.
Go ahead.
I think, because we were talking about marketing earlier, and we've been kind of talking about like what we can do to change it. And you've said we need to like be the writers we want to see in the world, as it were. And I don't want to get into like an anti-capitalist rant or anything, because we don't have the time for that. But
we do have the characters for it.
But I do think that it's the commodification of everything that is partially to blame for this. Partially, there's other factors, but it's a marketing tool. People want people to buy their books or watch their TV show or watch their movies, and so they're looking for any way to get in the highest amount of readers / watchers, like audience possible. That is the goal of someone creating, especially like a big budget TV show or a movie, or like the goal of like a popular author is to be popular, because when you're popular, you make money. And so I think that a big problem that like a big part of where queerbaiting has originated from is people realizing that there's a queer audience that wants queer content. And if they find out that something has queer content, they'll go watch it or read it and give the creators money. And as a result, but then, you know, they also don't want to isolate their not queer audience that might take offense to that. So then they try to find the balance of how do I keep the biggest audience possible, and that leads to queerbaiting. So basically my point is fuck capitalism, and and we need to start a revolution.